Hello and welcome to Full Throttle on Unprecedented TV, brought to you in conjunction with the Alliance of British Drivers. I'm Gregory, the Policy Director of the ABD, and tonight we're asking a simple question: are motorists getting a fair deal? I think we all know the answer to that. Drivers are paying over £1 billion a week in aggregated all-up taxes on road users, yet road investment sits at around £7 billion a year. Opposite roughly £18.6 billion pounds maintenance backlog. From a policy perspective, that gap raises serious questions about where the money is going, and whether drivers are being treated as taxpayers or simply a revenue stream and a cash cow.
Hello, I'm Paul Naylor, Communications Director at the ABD, and joining us today to talk about the matters that Brian's just mentioned is Howard Cox, founder of Fair Fuel UK and the man behind the Pump Watch campaign. We'll be looking at fuel price transparency, the political response, particularly from Labour, and whether anything is actually set to change for drivers. So buckle up, this is Full Throttle. Hello, Howard.
Howard, welcome. Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you guys too. It's good to see. It's nice to be with some friends. I've spent probably the last 6 or 7 weeks with a bunch of political so-called experts running our country, and well, I'll tell you more in a minute.
Yeah. Okay. Well, why don't you just give a little spiel about that, and then we've got a few questions that are pertinent to what you've been doing. Just give us a snapshot of what you've been up to your eyes in.
Well, this is the 16th year I've been bloody well doing this, and it's it's not doing my bank balance any good whatsoever. But that's not the point. I'm so angry about what's happening to our country, not just the aspect of the motoring issues, which I've been focusing on for the last 16 years. It's everything else that's going on. As we know, we can talk about all the linked things like net zero and the 2030 ban. We can go on for everything. You can go and talk about ULEZ, LTNs, parking. Yeah. Everything is actually anti-driver in this country, and I just fed up to the back teeth with it, and that's why I'm still going and fighting this, like you guys are. And of course, there's the other little matter of all the other things that are going on with the invasion, the Islamic invasion of our country, and all that sort of thing, and where that is our money going. When you made the point, Brian, quite rightly, £1 billion a week is going into the exchequer. And when you drive over that pothole, you think, hang on a second, where's that £1 billion going? So, and you quite rightly said, I think if they did try and repair all the potholes now, it would take 95 years to do it. And it's sad. But what I've been doing is I've been going up to Parliament on a regular basis. I'm just relaunching the Fair Fuel UK all-party parliamentary group, which is good news. That's going to be chaired by the excellent young Broxbourne MP, Lewis Cocking. He's only about 32, 33. I mean, I'm more than twice his age. It's weird sitting down with him, but he's very, very good, and he's very, very not just a petrol head, but the fact his constituents absolutely rely totally on motorised road user transport, and he's up and firing all cylinders. I'm hoping to meet with Kemi Badenoch next week, privately to have a chat, because did you notice how they came on board suddenly about fuel duty? The 5p fuel duty, where have they been for 16 years? But anyway, they've decided to try and fight the 5p fuel duty that's going up in the autumn budget, even though it's going to be staggered on 2 and 1p over a period of 6 months from there. It's still going to go up, and with the VAT on top, the immoral VAT on top of the fuel duty, we're going to be seeing some real pain. But obviously, with the Middle East crisis, it's become everyone wants to jump on the bandwagon. Reform are doing it. The Tories are doing it. We're seeing Taxpayers Alliance suddenly appearing, coming out and doing it, everything. And we had a bit of a gentleman's agreement, the Taxpayers Alliance, but we got new people there now, whereby they left me alone with fuel duty and they carried on with other taxation in the country. But they suddenly decided to come out and, well, I'm not anti that. I'm quite happy for them to do that. But it'd been nice to be involved with it. And they did quote me on a couple of things. But anyway, the politicians, let's talk about really what they're not doing. I suppose what they are continuing to do is not recognising the importance of the motorist, the driver. That's
well, and the other area, Howard, your where you started off was with the haulage lobby, because all the fuel taxation that goes through to the haulage lobby is just going to end up getting passed on to taxpayers anyway through higher prices in haulage. And almost all of the goods and food that's transported around the country transported by a lorry. So it affects them as well, but they don't give you a lot of support for championing that cause.
Well, they did for about 9 years. They did actually pay money on a monthly basis. It was, Fairfield UK was quite nicely financed by the RAC, the FTA, which is now called Logistics UK, the RHA. All three of those groups were very supportive. But as soon as I mentioned the fact I was anti-net zero, they suddenly said, hang on a second. And along with the late Quinton Wilson, who quite honestly, he moved over from supporting us and being our main spokesman for Fairfield UK to actually saying electric vehicles are the bee's knees and, diesel and petrol are the pariahs of this planet, which saddened me considerably. But I'm not going to knock Quinton. He did do a good load of work for us in the initial days, and rest in peace. He became a good friend, and he did complain that he said I didn't have much environmental sensitivity, and I cracked up when people would say that to me. I said I care about the planet just like anyone, but you don't do it by hitting people in the pocket and doing it under the premise that it's the motorist does everything wrong. When you think the 12 top super tankers that drive around the world are equivalent to all of the diesel cars' emissions, it beggars belief that it's going to get through. And you have to keep explaining this every year to this new batch of politicians. And we've as you know, Brian, Paul, ABD kindly financed various things about net zero, about the 2030 ban, and thank you for that. And we have to keep repeating that. Those figures haven't bloody well changed, near as damn it. And when you go on to the situation whereby what it means to the country economically, it also matters from a social point of view.
Yes.
I've just given an exclusive to the Daily Express, which I don't know when they're coming out with it, but the update of a poll we've just done, which is basically asking what would happen if pump prices increased by 20p. But that's the one that they've got recently. But there's another one coming out in the next couple of days. If pump prices increase by 20p, which in most places is happening on a daily basis. What would it mean to them? And you're looking at 2/3 are saying that they're going to cut back on food expenditure. They're going to not drive so much, not see their families. And that's my point about the social cohesion and the social community aspect of actually driving, the freedom to go anywhere you want, when you want, insecurity and safety, as opposed to, when I went up to London and Parliament yesterday, I got to Charing Cross, and there's always some dodgy characters hanging around, but there was about 50 young people of certain ethnic origin with hoodies on, standing there looking for people who were using their phones, out in the open. Yeah. And I'm pretty savvy to this. I never have it. I have been mugged twice up there. I haven't been physically hurt, but they try to grab it, those sorts of things. And it's a dangerous place. And yet we've got a mayor, as we all know, we love our Sadiq Khan, don't we? What he's doing to London, which is also what's happening to a lot of other cities right across the country, as we know. And that is the hatred for the motor car, the driver. And I just don't understand. Oh, bless his cotton sock. You look lovely. That man is well. In fact, I'll tell you what I'm doing at the moment. I'm jumping around a bit here, but I think it's important now. You've got a picture of him.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm in discussions, and I'm going to have to try to raise a lot of money for this. But I'm going to take him in the courts. So I've agreed to do that. I'm speaking to barristers, and we've gone through the cases. These barristers, most of them, really want to see this man go anyway. But the case I've got against him, he's a pathological liar, and he used evidence to get ULEZ expansion,
fabricated evidence,
implemented using data that were lies.
Yeah.
And would you believe? And I don't know how many people listen to this, but I've got to be careful how much I say about this. But fundamentally, that's a criminal act, lying in a public office.
Yes.
It's not a civil action that I'll be taking. It will be taking into the criminal courts. And that's getting pretty close now. I've been working on it for about 6 months now and behind the scenes. But I hope we can come to some sort of support for all our supporters that help me fund this, because it's going to cost about £150,000.
Okay.
And but I think it's worth it. If we did win that one, not only would we get rid of a horrible little politician, but also I think it would actually show the importance of the motorist and the driver, and to the nation, and why they shouldn't be treated just like as cash cow, cash fodder, all the things we've had. So anyway, I'm working on ranting away.
Before you move off it, Howard, before you move off that topic, there's a guy called John Lamb in Edinburgh, who is an expert on emissions and whatnot, and he's actually shown already that the arguments used to put the zone in place, the ULEZ zone in place in Edinburgh, were fallacious, because the required legal levels were being met 4 years before the zone was put in place. So that has implications for Cairn as well. It may be worth making contact with this guy, John Lamb. He goes under the Twitter name of John Fiss Scotland.
Oh, really?
All right. He can provide useful additional evidence supporting your arguments about ULEZ and about all these emissions lies, basically, because when you look at the figures now, the figures that they've got that vehicles are meeting, the Euro 6, they're in parts per trillion. Parts per trillion. That is so small. It's the only reason we know it's there is we've got such sophisticated information, and there's no evidence there's any health impacts associated with emissions at those levels.
But of course, as you appreciate, Sadat Khan would say it's because he's introduced these measures is the reason why the emissions are in trillions rather in the billions or millions. No, but the John Lamb thing, I have heard of him. You're right to remind me of that. I've forgotten that. And if you I'll go onto his Twitter feed and do a direct message to him. But the important thing about this, I've got about 20 things I could go for Sadiq Khan for. But doing that complicates any court case. So I've got to focus on one or two issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
And obviously this is going to get out. I can't keep it all secret, and his lawyers are going to all be geared up. But I think in terms of actually popular appeal for me going for him, I think I'd have a lot of backing. I just hope I can turn that back into some.
I think that's a fair comment, and certainly we will publicise it as much as we can. And on that, just for a second, can I ask anybody who's watching this to remember to subscribe and like, because the more people we get watching stuff like this, the more it attracts other people in, and the more it sort of helps us to keep producing content like this with esteemed experts and friends like yourself.
Yeah, absolutely right. And obviously, the big thing that's happening now is the Middle East crisis. And, I don't care whether you like Trump or not, and I don't care really the political situation. At the end of the day, the Straits of Hormuz and various refineries are being bombed in countries around Iran. It's not, and supposedly, friendly Muslim countries to Iran. They're being hit on this sort of thing. And guess what? Obviously, oil prices is rocketing. It reached nearly $120 this week, and it's something like 65% higher than 3 weeks ago. 65%. Just take that on board. 65% higher. And on that point, it's dropped actually by about $10 today, which is it's going to do this. This volatility is going to be terrible. Even though there are some experts, it does crack me up. Some of these economic experts who, these £150,000 a year. 25-year-olds sitting behind a desk, putting their spreadsheets out, drawing straight lines and all this sort of thing. At the end of the day, it's going to be volatile for some time. Yes. And what's going to happen, and it's in the remit of Rachel Reeves and this government to actually soften this blow considerably. And one of them is they can actually, which I've been calling for, you guys have been calling for too, is that we keep fuel duty frozen for the lifetime of this parliament. At least that. I want it cut, obviously, so do we all. But we're still the highest tax drivers in the world, near as damn it. We're about the 8th highest in petrol and 1 or 2nd with diesel worldwide. And that's the annoying thing for the poor old logistics industry, which I'm still frustrated with them not backing this so much because of the net zero issue. But, commercial, the plumbers, the electricians, the bricklayers, these people drive their diesel vans. They've got no choice but to use those vehicles. And yet, if they drove them in Germany or Luxembourg or Poland or France, diesel's taxed less than petrol, but not here. This is stupidity. And as we all know, back about 25 years ago, in the days of Gordon Brown and all that lot. We were told to drive a diesel, weren't we? Move away from petrol, drive a diesel.
Because of the carbon dioxide emissions. Yeah.
Yeah. So and in the last 25 years, because of vehicle, fuel technology, it's everything's cleaned up anyway. And if we'd carried on to Euro 7, Euro 8, Euro 9, if we're allowed to do that sort of thing, we'd probably get down to negligible stuff. And I'm working with 2 or 3 companies now, as you remember, the fuel catalysts.
Yes.
There's another fuel catalyst which is I've found, which I'm talking with people, and I'm going to try and convince through the APPG for the government to actually, they increased ethanol from 5% to 10%, which is complete bullshit, as we all know.
Yes.
But if they'd actually put these, like it's a legal requirement in much of America, Mexico, and the Middle East, to have these fuel catalysts, they could easily halve emissions, and improve fuel efficiency by 15%. And if people's fuel tanks are going down by 15% in terms of filling up, that would help a bit now, wouldn't it? And that, it's disgusting that, I think that they're not actually, recommend this to be a legal requirement in every bulk fill up at the forecourts.
There's no appetite for doing that for 2 reasons, Howard. One, the oil companies don't particularly want to see the reduction in receipts, and the government doesn't either, because 55-60% of the cost of the product is taxation of one form or another, fuel duty or VAT on fuel duty. It's criminal.
Yeah.
Well, you said the word criminal. I mean, absolutely right.
It's criminal.
And it's. I have to say that I feel for the retailers a bit, because they don't make much of a margin.
No.
And some of the abuse they've been getting is the Petrol Retailers Association. They did actually go to the meeting, but they turned down their first meeting with the government about this, and because there's no doubt thick ministers were saying, "Oh, retailers are making fortunes and all this sort of thing." They're not. They're not making fortunes whatsoever. It's the wholesalers that's further up the fuel supply chain, the rip-off. And there's the other thing about it. We can come on to that in a minute. But the thing I'm fighting for is, I can honestly say, you can quote me on this, that this interview we're having now, that I don't think they'll put fuel duty up in autumn. I think they will recognise that the unpopularity of that will be monumental and stupid. And I think, because bear in mind, people drive more in the summer. There's holiday seasons coming up there, so there'll be more fuel being purchased, etc. VAT receipts is a thing that rockets. Even if we drive less and litres go down, fuel duty goes down a bit. The VAT aspect when pump prices rise is huge. 20% on every fill up, as you say, on the whole of the cost of filling up. And I think the revenues from the motorists, they've got to recognise is coming in, and it's not being hypothecated into road infrastructure or repairs and things like that.
That's where it's criminal for me.
Yeah. It is. I mean, and as I keep saying, and it's recognised by good. I mean, Priti Patel is a good supporter. Obviously Lord Craig McKinley. He's right up there. I saw him, and they're really going to help like mad. But don't forget, we've got 300, whatever it is, or 400, what is it, Labour MPs. I can't remember what it is now. There's so many.
Wooden tops is the word, actually, I think.
Yeah. I just take the piss out of the, Labour are just lose. But the important thing for an APPG is clues in the title, all party parliamentary group. So I've got to have lots of Labour presence on it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the difficult. Graham Stringer will be on there. He's a good guy. He always has been.
Yes.
There's a couple of rural Labour guys in Scotland I think will come on board. They've been bombarded by certain emails from my supporters in the last few days. Something like 36,000 have gone out there, calling that. You've probably seen it anyway. But the thing is, with Rachel Reeves, she could do 3 things, and these are the 3 things we want. One is to announce fuel duty won't go up this year, preferably in the whole Parliament. But anyway, let's see if we can get this budget stay frozen. Yeah. Secondly, get rid of that VAT on fuel duty. That's 10 pence. Okay, that's a £5 a tank full for a family car. Yeah. But because don't forget, businesses, if they're VAT registered, can claim their VAT back. So it's more of an important thing for private like us, and sole traders who are not VAT registered. They're the ones that are going to be hit hard by that. So those 2 things are very important. And the third one you introduced me is about the pump watch. Yeah, I worked very closely with Claire Coutinho, the Minister of Energy, when she was in government, and we launched Pump Watch. It never got actually off the ground, really. It didn't. And believe it or not, the first person that actually asked me to write about it was a guy called, you may have heard him, Robert Jenrick.
Yeah.
And as you probably know, I'm not really friendly with reform anymore because of, even though I've stood in 2 elections for the buggers, simply because I believe in free speech and they don't. And we won't get onto a certain person called Tommy Robinson, but fundamentally, because I simply supported what he was trying to do. And did you know he spoke in front of Congress yesterday, in the US yesterday? And, that's how he's come along from this so-called Newton criminal, this skinhead thug, he's come along. He's now talking to the Israeli parliament and also the Congress yesterday, all because he loves this country, he loves our country, and he's trying to actually highlight the fact we're being invaded by an ideological group called Islam, and also he highlighted the child rape gang stuff, all those sorts of things. And that's all I said. I just support those things. I got no problem. But I was asked to leave the party, which I'm happily to. I'm still involved with politics, but I'm not pushing that any hard. I'm still fighting mostly for the motorists and drivers. So those are 3 things. Let's go. Fuel duty, please sort that out. Keep it frozen, preferably cut it. Get VAT off the fuel duty, that's 10p. Even if she does it for 6 months, just does it for 6 months. And, she won't be hit hard because people still to pay it and pump price is going to rocket. So the impact of VAT on the whole of the thing will probably be negated. And the final thing is to get this pump watch, because last week, for example, you may have seen me, I was on Good Morning Britain and I stood outside BP in a Shell garage in Tunbridge Wells. At a godly hour, 6 o'clock in the morning, talking to them, and we went into the garages and talked to the people behind the till. We tried to be sort of a bit, low key, and we couldn't take the cameras in, but we just asked them, what's happening with pump prices? And I think it was the BP garage said, we're going up 3p today. I said, okay, so you're getting a delivery? Oh no, we don't get a delivery for another couple of days. I said, why are you putting it up then?
That was
paid for. It's sick and it's disgusting. This opportunistic profiteering. I want them to make a decent living. Christ, we got diesel and petrol going. But you don't do it opportunistically like this in a time of crisis.
And then this is where the Competition and Markets Authority doesn't seem to be doing a blind thing. Because it's from discussions we've previously had, Howard, it's a cartel, the fuel distribution system, and it's not being properly regulated under European law, never mind UK law, because I know about this. I was in an industry that was heavily regulated against cartels operating. And you could expect a knock on the door any day from DG 11, Director General 11 of the EU, and they would come in and they would take everything out of your filing cabinets, empty the place, and take it back to see if they could find any evidence of collusion. And if there was, it was bloody serious. It was about 5 or 10% of your global turnover that they could fine you. And that's what we need in the UK fuel distribution system.
Well, the windfall tax thing is coming back on the agenda. Which I want the oil companies to do well. I mean, what gets me is we all remember, we're of a certain age, remember when there was about 45 refineries in this country. Now only 7. And so everything that we sell on those forecourts comes from those 7 refineries. So why the hell do we, Costco can charge, for petrol 30 pence cheaper than BP, and then we go to motorways, they can charge 50 pence less. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. That is pure profiteering. As I repeat, I want them to do well, especially the retailers. I've got to know a lot of garages, retailers who, they're struggling, the poor buggers. They have to rely on their supermarket side of their business to actually stay even. And, people come in for petrol and diesel. They make pence. Some of them just 1 pence on what they're doing. And I don't want them to be screwed like this. But when and even Asda, and I'm talking with them a lot at the moment, it's a shame because Asda were always the cheapest supermarket. But ever since Isla Brothers, the Euro garages bought them out. And I'm hopefully beating them the next couple of weeks. I was asked I think it was the Competitions and Market Authority actually asked me, what do I, because they would say, they allowed that to go ahead, that takeover. And I said, well, I'm concerned because Asda is always the cheapest and Euro garages are nearly always the most expensive. So if they come down to the Asda level, I support the takeover. But
Yeah.
I don't support it if it goes up. I'm afraid Asda is one of the fastest ones to go up. It doesn't mean to say they're the highest. They're still, because they buy so much in bulk. 49% of all fuel bought goes through supermarkets.
Yeah.
But the thing is, again, we're seeing this profiteering aspect. This, they got to do it to make money, but fundamentally, that's what I'm calling for. And so, your viewers and listeners to this thing is, get behind the Alliance of British Drivers and get behind Fairfield UK, please. You just go to it, and you can go on there. You can contact your MP directly with the special system we've got, asking the MP to go to Rachel Thieves and say, please, could you, do exactly these three things. Yeah. And as I said, about 30,000 have done it in the last 36 hours. So keep doing that for a bit, all the way to the budget. We just keep doing it.
Yeah. Am I right in thinking, Howard, as well, that you've adopted a saying, something like prices tend to rocket, but then fall back down or float back down like a feather? Is that one that I heard come from yourself?
Well, it's an interesting thing. I can't take full credit for that. That came from someone in America, right. But they didn't. Yeah, I'm the one that's put it out there. I'm the one that up like a rocket, down like a feather.
It's so true. It is so true. Yeah.
But the worst thing about it, Paul, is that yes, it comes down like a feather, but not by the same amount it went up.
No, absolutely.
That's even worse for me. It goes up 10p. Immediately oil goes up, but it takes 2 weeks to go down 7p.
Yeah. And like you just said, they don't wait for the new stock to come in. They'll put the price up on the old stock straight away.
Yeah. And that is immoral. That is immoral. I think criminal, illegal, whatever you want to call it. But the Competitions and Market Authority, to give them some credit, they did recognise that about 18, 19 months ago, and because I was involved in some of their inquiries, and they said they can't do this. But unfortunately, because of change of government, Labour promised they got this thing which is called, cheap fuel monitor or whatever they do. It's just basically petrolprices.com.
Yes.
For God's
sake.
The pump watch I want is that every single day, every retailer, it's their duty. First thing they do, they send the details of what they paid for that bulk fuel per litre, and then send out what they're selling it for. And that goes up to a central independent group who monitor to make sure it matches in with oil price changes and exchange rate changes, because everything's in dollars, as you know. So that's all we ask for. And I don't care if they make 10, 20, 30p profit per litre. I don't care, as long as it's transparent and honest.
Exactly. Yeah. If people still choose to go to those pumps, well, that's their choice. But they should know exactly what they're paying.
Yeah.
Well, the point is, Paul, Brian, this is a regressive tax for a start. It's a regressive thing. It hits the poor the worst, and it hits the retired people the most. People who rely on just the pension. If you, I'm good friends with my good mate Ben Habib, who's Advance UK. He drives a bloody Ferrari. And he's worth about, I better not say it on here, but he's worth a few bob. And the fact is, he doesn't care what he pays at the tank. And if some of those he lives in Fulham, some of those West London sort of fuel stations, you've probably seen them. I think they're selling petrol at the moment for just under £2.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So anyway, the important thing is, the only people that are doing good here, the RAC, the AA are doing bugger all. They do the usual thing. They send a letter, and because Edmund King and I do get on actually, but they rolled him out because he's on speed dial for the media. What he says. Simon Williams from the RAC and people like that. Again, another good guy, the sort of thing, but he's only on X thousand salary. Us lot here, we get paid nothing. We do this because we care and we're passionate. My accountants told me that what I've spent since I set this campaign up in the end of 2010, it is approaching £250,000, £250,000. That's what I've spent on this personally.
Yeah.
And I've had, and I have to say to you, I'm living on a pension now. That £250,000 that I could have gone into some investment or something I could have done, but I chose to do what I do. I'm not bleating. I'm not moaning about it. I'm not pleading poverty. I'm all right. But the fact is, I'm putting my mouth and money where, to do something. When you see these so-called heads of these, but, Green Flag and, AARAC and the RHA and the Logistics UK coming out talking, these people on big numbers of salaries. Your pensions, they got all these sorts of things. And it's easy to talk. I mean, the AA advocate cycling big time. They like, big wide cycle lanes. You know,
well, why are they not the site?
don't get me on that one.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've spoken a lot now, so I don't know. I think you should.
I was going to ask you a question, Howard, regarding. Do you think we should be drilling in the North Sea? Do you think it's time that the people woke up, the likes of Mr. Millibrain, and admit defeat, wave his little white flag, and we start drilling for oil?
Well, had we still kept all of these North Sea oil and gas things, and especially because there's still reserves under there, which, you know, ready to be drilled into, 25 years ago, and not put windfall taxes onto these things, and not force this into solar and wind, and not force this into, relying EVs and, this sort of thing. Had we done that 25 years ago and kept the momentum up, we'd have Euro 7, Euro 8, and we'd be self-sufficient. And this bullshit about we're governed by global oil prices. Well, bollocks to global oil prices. We're selling it in the UK for the price we want to sell it for. I don't understand that.
Yeah, exactly.
That comes out.
Yeah.
So in answer to your question, Paul, you bet. But I just got something on Facebook that came up from, I think it's the HGV supporters group, which criticised me for my point about the fact we should drill in the North Sea, because they said, well, you've got to realise that particular oil is not actually really good for petrol and diesel. Well, sorry, but Norway think it is.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's the same bloody supply. So excuse me, it doesn't matter. I mean, the fracking and things like that is sensitive. Is about that. I'm sure you've had loads of earthquakes up where you are, Brian.
Oh yeah, millions.
The point is, we're sitting on trillions of dollars of fuel reserves.
Yeah.
Let's be self-sufficient and move to clean fuel technology, but do it organically. You don't do it by hitting people in the pocket and basically destroying our economy.
You do it by evolution, not revolution, which is what they're trying to do.
And also do it as a matter of choice as well. If people choose to have it, then that's up to them.
But the other thing that's completely forgotten in all this crap about Just Stop Oil is about 6,000 oil-derived products that we're totally reliant on nowadays. If we don't extract the oil, we don't have the feedstock to make all of the antibiotics, the medical plastics, all of the products that are around us everywhere. We'd be going back to Stone Age, living in mud huts and wearing skins.
I mean, God forbid we had something like a meningitis outbreak and they couldn't get the medicines for that. Oh, hang on. We're living in the times that are already proving that this ideology is dangerous.
It is absolutely.
And I think the silent majority are finally waking up to all of this anyway.
Yes. And there is. Go on, sorry, Howard.
No, sorry, I was just saying we're hearing. Jenny, my wife, told me she just read a tweet. Apparently, Keir Starmer is apparently looking at with this meningitis outbreak, talking about locking us down again.
Oh, you are joking!
Again, it could be a conspiracy theory, but the rumours about that going around about that sort of thing. And you see, we've got a government, and of course, if he locks us down, there won't be any May council elections, so they won't lose as bad as all those sorts of things. It's all part of their plan to do this. I mean, I was naive all those 20 years ago. I looked up to politicians thinking, oh, God, they are good and they're important and respect. I actually, to be fair, I'm talking about 35 years ago. That's the area where, a certain person called Margaret Thatcher, that's the last person I respected. And I had a grudging respect for actually David Cameron, some of the things he did. But when I go up and see these politicians, and you've been into Portcullis House, guys, with me, and you and yourself and that, and I sat there yesterday and I watched. Carolyn Dineage came up to me and shook my hand, said, "Oh, hello, Howard, how are you?" And Priti Patel walked by, waved, and blew a kiss to me, and that sort of thing. I'm known in there, but when you see the quality of the people that have gone in there now, honestly, I've been in meetings, and I'm not joking. You wouldn't ask them to piss up and brewery comes close to it. How they get elected. I mean, these look at the tit whisperer, woman, up in Gorton and Denton, that sort of person, that girl coming out. I'm really worried about what the Green Party, because the Labour is in disarray. I know the right is fractured by so many different parties, but the left is becoming that way now, and there's a lot of people so pissed off with Starmer, they're moving to the Green Party. That is a big worry. It really is. That's the scariest thing for us all, because they want no cars on the road. They don't want anything like that whatsoever. They want to tax us to the hill, tax and spend beyond belief, and just, as you say, we just sit around in rags and horse and cart mentality.
Yeah, they want to turn this country into a banana republic, ban anything anywhere near anyone. Just dreadful.
Absolutely. So, but what obviously the Alliance of British Drivers, who I've got huge respect for you guys and what you do, and I know loads of people that I talk to have got respect for you guys, and keep it going. It's still little old me in Fairfield, UK. It's just myself and my darling wife who handles the accounts, which they're always in the red. But we keep fighting, we keep going, and I had this is funny actually. I had an interview with in Portcullis House with Peter Walker, the political editor of The Guardian. Hardly like-minded friends, obviously. But he does have a begrudging respect for me. He said to me, "There's no one who's done more for stopping money going to the Treasury than I have." He said, but he and I think he might even repeat that comment about which I take it. But he said, "Howard, what do you think's going to happen now with fuel duty?" And we talked about it. Is pay per mile coming in? And I said, look, how can pay per mile be fair? It just can't be. I mean, the closest thing to anything fair is obviously weight of vehicle, but every road user should pay. But why should a 44-ton truck delivering, £200,000 of goods to the supermarket pay ridiculous amounts of tax when, who's going to pay for that? The consumer eventually. Who else?
Yeah, exactly.
And we can go on forever. The best and most effective way of actually taxing fuel is through fuel duty and keeping petrol and diesel. It's the only way. The retailers act as, tax collect. We're all tax collectors for the government, of course, but especially if we run a business. But seriously, there's no other way of doing it. But obviously, as you quite said, Ed Millie Twat, he is hell bent on, and I don't know what hold he's got over Starmer. He must have some pictures that we don't know about for Ukrainian. I won't say who. But we are in a situation now where we are in a disastrous catastrophe of a political situation. It's impacting all our lives, and it's all very well the sexy things in immigration and talking about freedom of speech and digital ID. They're all sexy, but when it comes down to the crunch, things like fuel duty and the cost of living are most important things for people at the moment. That's the thing that matters. And I live not far from the coast, and I regularly see these dinghies coming in, with these people, and it's endless. It's never going to stop. But they're also coming in on the back of trucks. They're still coming in, and I'm off tomorrow to Braintree to talk at an event, because they've got 1,000 immigrants going into the local barracks up there in Braintree. And I go to the Crowborough one. You may have seen that I go to the Crowborough one quite a bit. It's not far from me here. And so I'm involved in a lot of these things, but these are impacting on our cost of living. And, this fuel duty, what we all this £1 billion a week is going on to funding, things like, these immigrants and the wonderful lifestyle they've got, and and all the wonderful benefits that people get, for not working. So that's the anger and frustration that still keeps me going.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's ridiculous to reward people for not working, and especially reward people who don't even belong in the country for not working, and penalise the ones who are working hard. It's an inversion of common sense.
But the big thing is, if you put more money into people's pockets, businesses do well, and that means they pay more profits. That means government wins out. I'm not suggesting we don't pay any tax, but I do believe. I mean, I'm a great believer that taxation shouldn't start till £20,000 a year income. I mean, that's what I stood on down in Dover there for reform, and they've gone back on that. They've now called it an aspiration, not a policy. Yeah. Oh dear, who's that one? Oh, the Scottish Sun. I won't take that one.
I mean, I still remember the Churchill phrase. He said, "Trying to tax your way out of recession is like standing in a bucket and trying to pick yourself up by the handles."
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. But it's. I talk to so many
Oh.
people. I mean, we're seeing council tax going up.
Oh,
We're seeing obviously our energy bills rocketing, that sort of thing. Water bills going up, and yet we have hose pipe bans, and it's been pouring rain for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
All these, we are being governed by idiots, and as you know, the blob is now something like 10 times the size of it was in 1997. Is it 650,000 now? Then I think there was something like 70 or 80,000 civil servants 30 years ago. We still run the country then quite happily. So what's going? Why do we need this? 500,000 extra people.
Yeah, I think there are all these behavioural psychologists and people like this who are trying to brainwash us to believe nonsense, and they're hangers on. And then there's all the quangos that go with that, and a lot of the stuff is in effect being implemented by quangos, and ministers claim they haven't got any control. Well, get rid of the quangos and cut the civil service down to the bone.
See now, I was still in the school in the 80s, and I can remember that by the time I left, I would say the majority of teaching staff were left-leaning. And if you look at the media today, most of the media is left-leaning. You've got a police force that's left-leaning. The problem that we've got here is that we've got just one sort of voice being heard in general. And it's people like us that fight against it. And hopefully common sense will prevail, because at the moment, this country, last time I went to London, I didn't recognise it. Didn't recognise it at all.
No.
Well, I'm there virtually every day. I'm proud. I was born in London. I was born in South London. I educated in London, worked in London, lived in London, and it is totally a foreign place now. I mean, I went back to Lewisham quite recently. I drove through it, and I didn't see one white face.
No,
I'm not being racist. That's the fact. That's what I saw. And there's a lot, and there's a lot of good, hard-working people in ethnic areas, especially. You probably heard the story. This is what's wrong with our country in terms of our political system and the postal votes and things like that. But when I was standing for London Mayor, I was, I think it was Whitechapel I was walking through, and I was with my colleagues there. We were putting things through post letter boxes and all leaflets, etc. The usual thing you do. Soul destroying, I can tell you that now. But I walked past, and this guy rushed out from his corner shop newsagent. And he said, "Oh, Mr. Cox, oh, great! Can I have a selfie with you and all this sort of thing?" Great, he's nice, and he's a lovely Pakistani guy, beautiful man. And he came up to me and he said to me, I said to him, "Have I got your vote?" He said, "Oh no, I'm voting Sadiq Khan, and I've got my 12 voting papers with me." And it had his name on it, each one. Yeah. And don't forget, he's got a family which he tells his family who to vote for, and that's this whole block voting thing. This is what happened in Gorton and Denton. And up there, I mean, you probably know that something, I can't remember the exact figures, but I think the block voting was responsible for something like 30%. And they're all voting left-leaning parties. And it's going to get worse. And I hope the elections do go through on May the 7th. In the council elections, because obviously Labour are going to get an absolute trouncing, and I hope that would mean step down. But what do we replace him with?
Well, we hope it's trounced by the right rather than the left, don't we?
I mean, Andy Burnham, you see, would have won that Gorton and Denton, no doubt. I mean, he's actually not a bad bloke. I mean, I've met him a few times. He's still not my politics, but he's quite fair, and it's a bit like. I had a lot of respect for people like Anti Wedgwood Ben and people like that. I really did. These people, you knew where you stood. They was true socialists, and you could actually. My mum and dad, used to vote Lib Dem Joe Grimman and things like that, going back to those days. And these were politicians. You could actually identify their label properly and what they stood for. Now, we're seeing reform moving further and further to the left. The Tories, that's coming back a bit. I'll give Kemi Badenoch, she's actually done reasonably well recently, give her a due. But, unfortunately, she's still suffering the problems of what happened and why we got Starmer. It's not because Starmer's good, it's because the Tories are so bad.
Exactly.
And reform are riding on the crest of that disenchantment with those two big parties. They're going to implode. Now we've got Restore Britain with Rupert Lowe, who's a dear friend. I was in his court case on Tuesday in the High Court because he's taking on Lindsay Hoyle regarding the bullying things, because this whole problem about parliamentary privilege, the way it works and everything. It's really interesting. Sat in there for 4.5 hours, and I was riveted by the arguments. It's quite interesting, and if you're interested, I can send you some details of it if you're interested. And Rupert Lowe wants me to join Restore Britain. I won't, because unfortunately he's surrounded by quite a few people that I regard as racist. And I don't want to get back to the sort of National Front days. No. We don't want that, but I want our country back, and I want us to be true British and Christian culture, Christian values, and all that sort of thing. Yeah. But equally, I don't want us to, basically ostracize decent ethnic people.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's just a matter of what's appropriate. I mean, letting all and sundry into the country, it's crazy. Filling up hotels and filling up army barracks with young men who are going to get frustrated and want to get out there and do stuff, and then this is when problems start. And
and often their attitudes are not conducive with ours in terms of the treatment of women and all sorts of things.
Well, exactly. I mean, I've just noticed actually. Have you noticed our picture? Actually, it's like, do you remember the John Cleese and Ronnie Parker and Corbett? I look up to him.
I'll have to even things up. I look up to him because he's higher class than me. I look down on him because he's.
I just realised. I was sinking lower into my seat. It's one of those comfy chairs I've had for years, and I'm not getting rid of it. Anyway, so that's where we are. Fairfield UK is continuing to keep going. UK.com team, and please. I mean, one of the things actually is useful. I've actually created an app on there where you can actually type in what you do miles per gallon, fuel you use, and how many miles you do a year. It tells you how much Fairfield UK has saved you in the last 15 years.
Oh, that's good.
You're looking at an average family car of £15,000 we've saved, and but for a 44-ton truck, you're looking at close to £600,000.
And that's £600,000 that otherwise the government would have taken to, basically, throw away on diversity and foreign climate aid and stuff like that. That was actually fed back into the economy to fuel economic growth. I mean, Reeves talks about economic growth, but basically she's been strangling the economy to death since she arrived. You cannot, as we said earlier, you can't tax your way to prosperity. The prosperity comes from reducing the tax burden and enabling the economy to work efficiently.
Absolutely. I mean, it's common sense. Everyone understands it, but for some reason, as soon as you get into government, I mean, most of the backbenchers get this, when I talk to them. But as soon as the backbenchers get promoted to a ministerial position in government, suddenly they lose all sense of reality and fiscal common sense. And we just got to get it right. We got to simplify tax for a start. That's one of the things I love to see. And I don't think you should tax the rich stupidly. They should pay more than their fair share, or they should pay their fair share, and they should pay more in terms of proportionality what the proletariat pays. But in terms of actually the rich people, don't penalise, because they're all leaving this country in their thousands, and they generate jobs, they generate everything, they generate wealth, and I just don't understand why they can't see this.
Well, I think in many cases the civil servants actually insulate the senior politicians from reality by selecting what information they're allowed to see when making policies and rubber stamping them.
Well, I'm quite close friends with the guy, you may have heard him, Andrew Bridgen. And Andrew's the one that was actually set out of the Tory party because of his COVID standings. When he did that. But I've got to know him recently, and he's now with Restore Britain. But I was with him early in the week, and we talked about a thing called conspiracy theories flying around. He said all those conspiracy theories are now coming home to roost. They are genuinely. There is a political agenda, and it's been driven by the senior civil servants, and basically the ministers are their puppets.
Yes. Yeah.
It's the truth. That's what's
Yeah,
happening.
it is, absolutely. That's why we need to clear out the puppet masters and allow the puppets to actually govern rather than be glove puppets as they are at the minute.
Yeah, what we do need, though, it's very important, is have quality people in. And
Yes.
no one trusts politicians anymore. There's still 45% don't come out and vote. That's half the country don't want to vote because they don't give a shit. They don't trust politicians.
Yeah.
And I get angry with some people, and I say to them, "Did you vote?" And they say, "No." Well, I've got no sympathy for you. You've got to vote.
Yeah.
I come from the school. I think voting should be compulsory, like the Australian system, on the basis that you can spoil your paper, you can have none of the above or something like that. All those sorts of things. And I'm also for having a referendum again, and particularly on net zero. And,
totally.
I think any proposal that's going to bring about a major change in society should be decided by referendum, not by Parliament.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more with you. But it looks as though we're going back into the EU. We're doing it through the back door at the moment. But I think Rachel Reeves is saying it, and Sadiq Khan came out yesterday.
The
next it should be in the manifesto of the Labour government that we will be going back into the EU. You couldn't. Oh God, I'm glad I'm as old as I am now, because I don't want to live any longer with this lot.
Well, I mean, I'm the same age as you, Howard. Within a month or two,
I know.
We should just keep fighting these guys tooth and nail until we finally defeat them and force them out.
Yeah, but you look much better than me, mate. I don't know what pills.
No, I think you're looking better than you have for ages, Howard. I was really pleased to see when you came on that you're looking good.
That's very
you've
kind.
got more hair than me.
I've lost a lot of weight. That's what it's all about, especially from the wallet.
He'd like to say that it was like these slimming tablets, but it's not. It's
no, not only on the Ozempic. Okay, well, I think we had some questions, but I think you've covered them. I'll read them out to you. The first question: what is pump watch, and what problem is it trying to solve? Well, I think we've covered that.
Well, in essence, pump watch is just a body that the Competitions and Market Authority approved of, and the Tories were brought in. It hadn't got. It was a voluntary system that they brought in, which, in other words, to fill in this central database, each retailer. But that didn't get off the ground very well at all. And I said it needs to have teeth.
Yes.
And I think, if you're caught profiteering, one, you're getting basically a slap on the backside. If you second time you do it, you're warned of actually legal representation and a fine. And if you're third, you're taken to court.
Yes.
Those are the sorts of things we need to do. But they were scared to do it, and this is what's wrong with so many politicians. They're just scared to do this sort of thing because it's a bit like the backbenchers with this whole thing about abortion and assisted dying. And I don't get what's happening in terms of a nation whereby common sense policies, common sense decisions are being absolutely railroaded against the majority's wishes. I just don't understand. I'm sure you agree.
Absolutely. It's a very antithesis of a democracy.
Well, we haven't got one, have we?
No, that's the point. We've got an elective dictatorship at the moment.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was the first question. Second question, which Paul was going to ask, I think, is why is there so little transparency in UK fuel pricing? Well, I think we've covered that. We understand that. The third was, with motorists paying over $1 billion a week in aggregated road user taxes, is the system fair? I think we clearly know the answer. Then what would Pump Watch actually change in practical terms if it was implemented as you want it to be implemented?
Well, it's very simple. Is that they're giving reassurance to drivers and the economy that we've got fair, honest, and transparent pricing.
Yeah.
As I say, I don't care if you make 20 pence out of every driver, say, per litre. I don't give a damn. Good luck to you. As long as we know about it. But when oil goes up, that sort of thing, it's still 20 pence.
Yes.
If it goes down, it's still 20 pence.
Yes.
That's what people want to see. If we get that, no one understands that calculation. Where does it come from? I've asked, and the Petrol Retailers Association hate me for keep asking it. That sort of thing. And I say, I'm not into you making a decent living, and your members should do bloody well. But just tell us how it's done. Because if you buy a pint of milk from that BP garage and a pint of milk from that Shell garage, they're the same.
Yeah.
Why is the petrol difference? Just tell me why.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if there's a big sort of difference in haulage, like, taking petrol, well, having said that, it's a bit like taking coal to Newcastle. But, if you've got to go to the Scottish Highlands, then there's inevitably a bigger transport cost, which, you can justify as long as you can quantify it. But in general, you're right. Whether you buy it in Luton or where else begins with L, London, the prices should be similar.
Well, absolutely. But I mean, I don't come from that thing. I don't give a damn how far it's being transported. We're only a small island, for God's sake. And trucks are going up and down all sorts of things. You should build into that you pay the same wherever it is. And
you should provide the infrastructure to make it possible.
And the refinery is up there. You've got Aberdeen. It's a
small
place.
Exactly. That's why I realised it was a bad example, actually, when I made it.
I know, but you're right to say it, Brian. Because they do actually, if you look at the RAC Foundation data thing and you look at the daily pump prices, you'll see transport costs for diesel is more than petrol. Excuse me, diesel is not volatile like petrol.
Yeah.
So what's that all about? I mean, then you've got the environmental taxes, you've got the green taxes, you've got all those sorts of. There's more on diesel, and yet it's supposed to be. It just gets beyond a joke about this. Someone sits there, gets up in the morning, has a shave and cleans their teeth, puts a suit on, then goes and sits at a desk and makes decisions that are completely and utterly crass.
Yes. Yeah. It really, the old thing that Thatcher used to watch. Yes, Prime Minister. I mean, you really see it being actually played out in reality now. It's quite scary.
Oh, it's brilliant. I mean, you couldn't, Sir Humphrey. I mean, he just, I bring him back. I love him.
Yeah,
obviously they've all now, but. I crack up. Is this? When you think of it's the two Ronnies and Morecambe and Wise and Yes Minister, those three, never a swear word said in any of them. But I absolutely crack up. Four candles.
Candles for forks. It's one of the other questions was: do you think Labour are genuinely backing Pump Watch, or are they just paying lip service?
Well, they're not backing Pump Watch. They've got their own thing. They call it something else. And one of the things that really upsets me, and I'm about to actually go out in public with it now, and I gave them the benefit of the doubt, Labour. In early December, I wrote to them about, I don't know if you saw, but the EU decided to actually move the ban on diesel petrol new car sales to 2040. They're at 2035 now. We're still at 2030. So I wrote to all of the people, and it was a registered, recorded delivery letter to main ministers, obviously, and Starmer, Rachel, Heidi Alexander, Transport, Ed Miliband, and the secretary. I can't remember who they all are now. They move around a lot. Yeah. And I asked them, please, could you consider, because of your love for the EU, Mr. Starmer, could you follow their lead and move it to 2040? I've not had a response back. Not a letter. We're in March now, so I think it's 14 weeks now that I sent that. So I'm about to go public with that how their disregard for probably one of the most respected campaigns there's been. Just complete disregard. They can't deny they've said, because I got proof they've got it. And this is my point about, we're 3 years away from this now, from the 2030 to whatever you want to call it. And as we know, I hear Rolls-Royce are now dropping their electric vehicle program.
Their drivers like V12s better than electric drivetrains. What a surprise!
Exactly. And there's lots of other companies across, especially Japanese countries, are not doing it and all we're doing, we're still importing cars, etc. Because we've got no manufacturing over here. The guys on the manufacturing line, the production lines, they can't plan, can they, with this sort of thing going on?
No.
Let's drop all these bans completely, obviously, and let the market dictate.
Exactly.
Because it's nothing to do with the environment now, because they're talking about taxing EVs. Well, they are taxing EVs now. So it makes no sense. No, none of it ever did from the start, Howard. So, and that brings us to what was going to be our final question. If you could implement one reform tomorrow, what would it be? Well, it would be a specific one. Obviously, I would actually. It would be not one. It would be a combination of the VAT off fuel duty and cut fuel duty by 20 pence. And but combined with the factors, let diesel and petrol evolve through encourage and invest in clean fossil fuel.
Yeah, so you're taking a multi-technology approach, not just forcing everybody down one route, and let the best technology evolve.
Exactly, and because we can go back to you know about it better than anyone, Brian. When you've written a lot about this. The fact is our national grid is shot to blazes. It just can't handle all this. And if you're on the 4th floor of a flat, how are you going to charge your little car? And we can go on all the impracticalities of it. And then there's the danger of it exploding and the fire things. I mean, we're getting vapes now causing fires. We had that in the station up in wherever it is in Glasgow, wasn't it? I think. That was a vape shop blew up because the batteries overheated apparently, so they were charging. So, in answer to your question, we got to the motoring taxation's got to be completely thought based on actually sensible approaches to what fuel you use. And I'd also go as far as to say, everyone who uses the road should pay something, and that means bicycles as well. And, I still get my usual threats from them. On a daily basis about that.
I mean,
yesterday, I was nearly run over by a cyclist just right outside Westminster Station. I was just coming out, and suddenly this cyclist went whizzing by on the pavement.
It's time to regulate cyclists, as because the level of law breaking in London, traffic lights and all the rest of it. You can see videos posted by. There's a guy on Twitter who's a very sensible Aegis, I think he goes by on Twitter. And he shows all these photographs of cyclists just completely violating the laws of the road, coming through red lights, turning across vehicles and forcing them to make emergency stops. But they need controlling and regulating because they're completely out of control at the moment, the cycling lobby.
In fact, and the one big thing, this is my third risk. You said about one. The third one, we need a 20-year road user strategy plan. 20 years, because and the people that put that together are the people who understand road user transport.
Not politicians.
No, definitely not, and not even the current road safety lobby, because they ignore everything except speed, and they're currently trying to roll all the causation factors together, so you can't work out the effect of excessive alcohol, drug consumption, vehicle theft in amongst the factors. They're trying to smear it all together so they can just say, it's all speed related. Well, when you look at the really high speed ones, it's invariably that they involve drugs, alcohol, escaping from or in a crime scene. So they're a particular category that doesn't reflect the behavior of the vast majority of road users. But they're trying to smear that so you can't identify that fact. So absolutely, you're right. It's essential.
Well, I rest my case, my lord.
I think we've had a good, interesting interchange of views and opinions, and as usual, it's been great to have you on, Howard. So, I realise we've just broken through the 1 hour barrier, so it's probably a good place to stop, and we'll get Charlotte to top and tail the episode, and we'll get it out, and we'll link, send you the link as soon as it's ready to go out.
Well, congratulations on what you're doing here. I'm doing a lot of the independents now. Obviously, Charlotte arranges me to be on Mike Graham's show and people like that, and I understand. I think Claire Dire Consequences. She's doing things now, and
she's doing very well.
A certain person called Lembit Opik. Have you heard of him?
Yeah. Disreputable character.
Well, great. Thank you, guys.
When he hears that, he's a good lad. He's all right.
Take care, Howard.
All right. Cheers. Thanks, Howard.
Take care. Look after